normal monsters, it would be like, is this food or fight or whatever kind of response. He's not like obviously hungry. I mean, he does eat them, which is something I'd never seen. I don't think I've ever seen Godzilla eat somebody before, really. Like chomp,
No. Well, so the Dean Devlin one, doesn't Godzilla chomp a couple of people in there?
Oh, well, yeah, you're talking about 1998 Godzilla?
Yeah, but I think it's like chomps him. Doesn't this one we actually see Godzilla like grab and
somebody,
kinda, like throw and
like a dinosaur.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, thank you for being here. This is the inaugural episode of the Check the Gate podcast, which is also going to be on YouTube and Instagram. Maybe I'll get it over onto TikTok as well. But this is something that's been kind of brewing for a little while now. I have wonderful friends and I work in a wonderful community of film people, and I love to talk about film. I love to talk about film all the time. I love the people that I talk to and watch films with.
Yeah.
And Gretchen is one of the dearest people that I have watched films with and talked about films with for a decade.
Yeah.
You and I talked about films for, over a decade now, but...
Well, yeah, because we were on the Kaijucast, and that I was on for 4 years.
I forget in there where I officially met you, because I did do the zombie web series in 2010. And
that was before my time.
Somewhere in the con world prior to Kaijucast or around the beginning of Kaijucast.
Yes.
Did I meet you through Kyle and Kaijucast?
Yes. Or maybe. I don't know.
It was somewhere in there.
Yeah. We had a lot of like friends that were mutuals, and those kind of those intersect. And
it's a big overlap.
Portland's a small town.
Yeah, big overlaps in a small town.
True story.
And so I started doing Kaijucast with Kyle Yount.
Yeah.
And you came on 4 years into it?
4 or 5 years into it, because I came on as originally friends with his wife. And it's so weird because, again, like the whole overlapping groups, like we knew each other but didn't know each other kind of thing. And then I came in as doing the Bechdel test and talking about the Bechdel test in kaiju films, because I came from another show. I was on a small podcast called the Horror Brew podcast, and that one where we did a lot of like was discourse about horror movies, obviously, and then we would do a cocktail that we would kind of favor around that. It was kind of the beginning of that, like where a lot of people do that now with a brew and a
I
movie.
missed this one.
Yeah. Oh no, it was really cute. It was a cute one. And then they ended up doing like horror trivia in Portland, and then they moved to New York. But yeah, so I was asked to come on for Women of Horror Month on the Kaijucast and talk about the Bechdel test and how it related in kaiju films. And this does not pass at all. But that's a low bar. But we're talking about movies that weren't even expected to be in that nature. Like they were, kaiju films were more of the the fantastical and more kid, less humans are more scenery than they are actual characters in those films back in the day, the Showa era. But yeah, so that's how I got started on the Kaijucast. And then they brought you, and I was like, I know you, and you were like, I know you. And because we had like a revolving cast, and that would we'd have like multiple people from different areas, like Charles Babbage, and then like the Dave Helfrey and everybody. We kind of all moved around.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I was on the very first episode, but I wasn't on every episode. There were just times where life didn't allow me to be there, but I was on most. I think I was on more than 50%.
Yeah.
I think. So, so Kaijucast, for those of you that don't know, the Kaijucast was Kyle Yount, and it was him. He's a huge kaiju fan, Godzilla fan. This was a really big deal for him, launching all of this stuff. And he already had sort of a foothold in the Godzilla rubber-suited monster universe, but this really expanded it. And so it was always news, and we talked with people who were in the films and people who made films, fan suits.
Oh man, it was such a good time. It was very halcyon days with that, because we had so much access to people that were part of like FX teams. And I mean, this is also before like it got real big in America. I feel like we were kind of at the beginning of that, like getting to see that cresting happen before that wave crashed into the legendary films where people got more like Godzilla's evolution, I suppose, for American cinema.
This was post Dean Devlin 1990s Godzilla.
Yeah.
And this was pre-legendary Gareth Edwards Godzilla.
Yeah.
So we came in early in that stuff.
Yeah.
We were talking about it.
And we talked about things that conversations people hadn't had before, like talking about Showa era and Heisei era, and like those were terms that people hadn't heard before, especially like how they related to like Japanese cinema and with kaiju cinema. But yeah, it was we were in a time where this was still very new and still like getting to expose people to things they had never seen before,
right,
and explaining what these meant and these eras of Godzilla films meant.
And even for the folks that were Godzilla fans, because we had a huge Godzilla fan following, people who went to G-Fest or they went to other kind of events that had anything Godzilla with them.
Monsterpalooza would show those people.
Absolutely, yeah, Monsterpalooza.
That was a good time.
Yeah, so there was already this fan base that was kind of there that didn't really have anybody feeding into it, because it was also, I mean, 2010, that seems weird to say, well, it's 15 years ago now. But nobody was like, podcasts were kind of laughed at really at that time.
Yeah, they were really new, and you know, they were still kind of like, that's a nerd thing. I mean, well, we are nerds, but I mean,
it still is.
It still really is.
Now it's a monetized nerd thing.
Right.
Yeah. Smash that like button for alert.
Subscribe.
That's right.
Like and subscribe and share with all your friends.
That's right. Because you know what this world needed was another mediocre middle-aged white man with an opinion on films.
Oh. Well, and that's where like that was a part of that was interesting for me coming into that was that it still really truly is, but it's kaiju films and kaiju nerddom and that kind of stuff. It's still a very boys club, and it's a little more open nowadays, but I would just even say like 4 years ago or 2 years ago, it's still really boys club. I mean, there's like, I could probably name 10 women in the kaiju fandom that are like impactful, like 10 out of a sea of dudes. And like a very, even smaller than that, a non-binary contingent being like the very small amount, even smaller minority. Yeah.
Well, thankfully that didn't bring about any type of weird interactions from the fan base with you being out there.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but so we did Kaijucast, as well as seeing each other out in the wild and in various conventions around town and whatnot. So our Venn diagram started to kind of merge, I guess, a little bit, getting closer and closer to one. So yeah, so Kaijucast did its thing, and Rachel, who was a part of that as well. And yeah, there was the whole contingency of folks. Yeah. And then Kaijucast concluded after a decade.
Oh, that was hard.
We had a few random episodes that we did in there as well, just with film releases. We all kind of got the band back together.
Oh yeah, let's see.
Shin Godzilla, we got back together.
Well, the show was still going then.
Was it still for Shin? Okay.
Yeah,
it must have been like.
It was for one of the legendary films, and it was for. We did a small Kyle has another program called Collect All Monsters, and it's more of a Sofubi toy, more oriented towards like the toys of like kaiju toys and whatnot. And they had a like crossover, like a Kaijucast versus, and then when we all got together for Godzilla -1, that was also like a really big deal.
That's a great segue.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
Hey, Godzilla -1.
Godzilla -1.
Yeah.
So, with the Kaijucast, I was kind of the naysayer because I didn't have the historic viewing that a lot of the fans did and a lot of the people that participated in the show. They
Yeah.
had watched a lot of the movies, even outside of Godzilla, like a lot of the other kind of rubber-suited monster films. So most people had more of a watching or an understanding than
Some
I
of the
did.
people grew up with it. I mean, not
Yes,
me.
yeah.
I kind of came into it like in the early aughts in the late '90s. So I was more of a Heisei era of like Millennium series type stuff, and then went back and rewatched and caught up. But
Right.
a lot of people have that strong nostalgia from like I watched it on like the monster double feature, blah blah blah. Cool.
Yeah.
I mean.
Right. And I didn't get to have that. So I didn't have TV growing up. So I didn't get to really see Godzilla. And I saw a few Godzilla movies here and there a little bit, not in their entirety. I
Yeah.
knew they were out there. I didn't know the eras. I didn't know the movies or anything like that. I'm kind of, I guess I'm one of the, so I'm a Mystery Science Theater 3000
Oh, totally.
Godzilla person.
Yeah,
so the
like
first-
Gamera.
Right, exactly, Gamera, and I forget a couple of the Godzillas, but those were really the first time where I had watched most of a Godzilla film, but I was watching it with commentary, so it wasn't the same. So I didn't have the same lore and knowledge that a lot of people did. So to a degree, I was a little bit of the naysayer in the group.
Well, and there were also dubs too. Yeah.
Yes.
So you also got that. You didn't have that like the language exposure that it was like the seriousness of like whatever show era of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But yeah. But you were kind of the straight guy. I mean,
I was, and at the time I had just moved from one career into a film career, so I was early in my film career,
Yeah.
and I was making my own films and doing commercial work, while I'm now watching these films for the first time with a fan base of people who absolutely adore them, and then I'm dissecting them.
right? How
Through
dare you?
Through my own lens in my 40s.
I'm
watching
horror
these.
movies. That's what I
Yeah.
came in with. I have a strong knowledge of Japanese horror.
Mm-hmm.
I had I brought to the table was, besides the Bechdel test, is that I had a ridiculous knowledge of Japanese horror movies and like the evolution of how Japanese cinema, like Japanese horror, kind of made its way into America. And so that was my bent, is that I brought that whole like talking about the horror elements of like these films and their intention, or at least my
Yeah.
interpretation of intention. Yeah.
Nice. Well,
Yeah.
and so that's been huge. Like your friendship and my relationship with you through these movies, going to horror has been really huge because I didn't grow up with TV. I also didn't grow up with a functional movie theater in my town.
Whoa.
The functional movie theater was 130 miles away. It was from where I was. I grew up in a little tiny town in Eastern Oregon, so that's where you had to travel 130 miles to go to a movie theater. We did have a rental store. We didn't have a Blockbuster though,
Yeah.
but we did have a rental store. This is mid to late 80s.
Yeah.
So that was it. Like you had the VHS local store, and that was how we watched
Wow.
movies. And so, and also part of the background of me with just a Christian conservative family who was very much afraid of those kind of things. So I
Totally.
didn't watch horror movies. It was a really, 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 really big deal when I first saw Jaws. And I think I saw Jaws, probably somewhere around like 87, 88 for the first time. I mean, it had
Yeah.
been out for over a decade by then. Alien was the same way the first time. I don't think I saw Alien, the first Alien movie, until probably around like 89, 90, 91, somewhere
Oh,
in
wow.
that world where I was like late teens, early 20s. So horror I was literally afraid of watching horror films because I didn't know what I was watching.
Right.
And I had these old tendrils of religion and various things that
Oh,
were still in there.
sure.
So I was literally afraid of horror. And so you and Kyle, Dave Helfrey, a few other folks have been this really great, wonderful introduction to horror films, and like, oh, I gotta go and see them. There's a person here in town who I hope to get on the show with us sometime. Jerry is her name, a writer, has a podcast, Whiskey and Horror, I believe it's called. Like, her knowledge of horror is unbelievable, and it's crazy the awesome stuff that she watched. Trista Perez, who knows her horror, she really knows her Grindhouse stuff.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
But again, even Grindhouse, like, it's amazing to have watched the films now in my 40s and now into my early 50s that I remember seeing the box covers for in the VHS store and being afraid of them, and now watching them and going, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have.
They're absurd.
Yeah, they're crazy. And I don't know how I would have processed those in my teens, not having, I guess, somebody there to explain to me what a low budget is, or, you know, what a B movie is, or anything like that. My family doesn't have that.
Well, we didn't talk about that really back then either.
Yeah.
I don't think that was like part of the scope of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, as we've evolved as an audience, like, people have begun to understand what these kind of terminology means,
Mm-hmm.
like what the difference between a Grindhouse film is versus watching, like, this is a B-rated action film, or is this a horror film, or is this a horror comedy, or you know, is this black comedy? Is this, you know, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that those are terms that we're still, like, we evolve as an audience and become more. Having more discerning tastes.
Yeah.
You know.
I saw a Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time in 2024.
No kidding.
The original, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. I had never seen it before.
What'd you think?
At 53, I was still afraid to watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I didn't know. Well, first off, I was surprised at how, by today's standards, how low volume the violence is that's necessarily on camera.
That one is about thematic setting. I mean, Hooper, man.
It was amazing. So I don't know what the budget was on that. Incredibly
Not
low.
very
That
big.
was that 76?
Something, maybe even earlier, but
So it was somewhere in there.
it was in the 70s. for
Yeah,
sure.
and that, I think his budget was like $100,000, something like that, $120,000. I don't know. Don't quote me on that one. I don't remember, but it was ridiculously low for something that was being released into the theaters to some extent, which was the same for, like, Halloween. Halloween had a $300,000 budget in the 70s when they made that
Something
one.
like that, yeah.
But yeah, so I was angry at myself for not having watched Texas Chainsaw sooner.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch. It was great. And I watched it. Did I watch it at, I think I watched it at the Hollywood Theater. It was a Hollywood Theater
35
release.
millimeter.
Yeah, and so
That's
it was
sexy.
It was
Yeah.
so good. It was fun to watch. And yeah, the art design and the sets and everything when they get into the house and just everything that's in there was so good. The things that they were, like, pulling off and trying to pull together. But it's
And it scared people.
Yes.
I mean, because
it is a tense movie. There's a lot of tension.
He was masterful at building tension in that film, and then on top of that, using those elements of like our knowledge of serial killers. And I think that kind of preyed on the people's fears at that time too. I mean, that's always what I feel like Godzilla films, horror films in general, are a reflection of what people's societal fears are at the time.
Yeah.
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 I mean, look at, like, we're looking at Godzilla -1, right?
Yeah. Well, so look, that's our first film. That's
Yeah.
the film that we chose as our first film to talk about.
'Cause it would
is
be easy.
Godzilla -1 because we have all of this
Right,
Godzilla
right.
history in
We
there
might as
with
well.
us, and we went and
Full
rewatched
circle.
it again in the theater because it was re-released, and then we watched it
cool.
again
That was cool.
in black and white.
Yes. Was that your first time seeing it in black and white?
It was my first time watching it in black and white. Yeah.
Isn't it pretty?
It is pretty. You saw it in the theater in black and white, correct?
So I nerded out on that one because I was so completely blown away by this film, and I saw it in the theater like 6 times. Like the first time saw it, because I knew we were going to do a Kaijucast episode on it. And now we ended up doing like a Zoom meeting, and it was us and I think some people from Collect All Monsters. But that podcast isn't normally a film podcast. So it's always interesting to kind of put us together with them too, like, because they mostly talk about, they talk about the movies, but they talk about them in a very light manner and like mostly in description of like of the toys themselves. And I think that so it's just kind of a different meeting of minds when we do those kinds of episodes with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like with Godzilla -1, I was so blown away by a modern Godzilla film. I mean, I love Shin Godzilla. That is my favorite. Oof. Quote me on it, I guess.
You're quoted.
I'm quoted as Shin Godzilla is my favorite Godzilla film.
Yeah.
And then I would say second to that being, Hedorah versus Godzilla, and then this one. I mean, I loved this movie.
Yeah.
This was the first time in a Godzilla film that I really cared about the human element. And it was easy to care about these characters. They were flawed, and we saw a hero's journey. And I'm just really lightly overtouching the tops of the subjects that are shown in that film. But it was the first of its kind in a lot of ways, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this director is going to bring to the table, because he got greenlit for a second film, and his favorite Godzilla film is also Godzilla versus Hedorah.
Yeah.
So I have some hope that we're going to have another canonical Godzilla series of films that is not an American make.
Yeah. And on a very little budget too.
50 grand, right? Or something ridiculous like that?
It was, I think it was under 15 million.
Under 15 million. I heard it was like a really ridiculous low number.
Yeah, there was.
So 15 million, that's still really low for.
Horrendously low.
Whoo, go, if you haven't seen this film, go out and watch this film immediately. It's ridiculous, and come back to us.
Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah, spoilers.
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, is there anything to spoil? There's no grand surprise in this at all.
They're warned, just in case.
Okay.
Who knows?
Spoiler alerts?
Yeah. If it's been out for more than a year, I figure you don't have to be able to warn anybody.
That's good.
But
That's
you know, I'm not ready to start building any type of YouTube internet hate yet. That's coming.
Well, I figure if you see the title of this is going to be first episode Godzilla -1.
Yeah. Yeah, if I burn a bridge on the internet, it's not going to be because I spoiled it. It's because I said something else stupid, so I might as well.
But yeah, I mean, this film had a low budget, and there is no way, shape, form, or fashion do you see this as a low budget film. This director did a pachinko commercial, right?
Yeah.
And he also did the theme park Godzilla for there's I think it's called like Unayo. Oh gosh, I cannot remember the name of the theme park. But he did a small like movie, a Godzilla movie, and I think that's why he was even allowed to like get on board with this, because he is a new director as far as Toho is concerned.
Right.
But he did a lot of the anime remakes or anime like live action films. Like he did Parasite. He did
And visual effects. He's got a whole visual effects background.
Yeah, and he also was part of the Attack on Titan stuff.
Oh, okay.
He did those.
That's right.
He's huge in that industry. The Doraemon movies, the Dragon Quest movie, I think is also his. He's pretty prolific as far as like what he's done with a CGI anime style and bringing that to life.
Yeah.
So Toho trusting him to do Godzilla was a big deal, and it shows. I mean, it shows in every moment, every frame, how much he loves Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Loves Godzilla, but is also a storyteller.
Yes.
That's the big thing, because a lot of the directors, when we were on the Kaijucast, repeat directors, new directors that would come in. People were fans.
Yeah.
They were big fans, but they were usually burdened with low budgets and quick turnarounds, because it always seemed like, and I don't know this specifically, this is how it felt just through all of our movie discussions and filling it in. So I'm filling in a little bit of space here on my own. It always felt like Godzilla was on the cusp of being canceled in some way, of like going away, we're not going to do another one. And then it always seemed like there was like just enough, like it did just enough where someone was like, oh, this did make a profit and people do still like this thing. Quick, let's go make another one and go get in on it. Oh, it's this big scramble and everybody's running around. They're throwing a little bit of money and they're trying to rebuild cities and put out, repaint the old suit real quick, that we burned the last time. And let's throw it all together and make another one and get it while the iron's hot.
I think that fandoms fall in love again.
Yeah.
And I think that like every like younger, I hate to say younger generation, but like I think that each evolution that we get of Godzilla is somebody revisiting those films or falling back in love with those films.
Yeah. Well, they did it with Legendary. I can't say, the Legendary films are not made for me.
No, they're not made for us.
Yeah.
As Godzilla fans, but like they're made for American kids that, especially the most recent ones. I watched one of them the other day and I was like, oh boy. I hadn't seen the new Godzilla versus Kong, New Empire.
Oh, I haven't seen that one
whatever,
yet.
Ghostbusters, I don't know.
Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet either. Godzilla versus Kong was
so
Nothing Matters the movie to me, and I was like, well, I don't know if I need to continue.
I think that there comes a point when we're making movies to make monies, and we're making movies that will put butts in seats and sell popcorn and
it was
toys.
A kitchen sink film. Throw it in there.
Yeah.
Why not?
Let's
Hovercrafts.
Great.
Hollow Earth.
Hollow Earth. That was for
All
me.
of it.
What was it? What was the one that was like something camouflage? Like I was like, what year is this movie supposed to be in?
Oh my gosh! I don't think you can try to even run a calendar of days within the movie, because it's like we're on Skull Island, now we're on a ship, now we're in the center of the Earth, now we're in Tokyo, and there's a transport system between the two, and it takes us days to be able to get over here, but this thing gets you there in hours, so it's like, there's no chronology in that. I feel like time's out the door.
I feel very like fractured when I watch those films.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I'll be bagging on those that's going to be. I have no love for the Legendary films. The first one, I was like, okay. I was like, this has potential. And then I was like, I could foresee what was going to happen. That studios would be a part of it, and production companies would be like, let's put this Coca-Cola product in, or Surge energy drink, or whatever heck. And so that was the obvious route that those films were going. But that's okay, because we got Shin Godzilla, which was a love. I mean, that's the director of Evangelion.
Yeah.
And so there was so much brought to that, and it was a very serious film. And American fans didn't love that because it was procedural. It was very Japanese. There was
very much a commentary on the political bureaucratic bureaucratic system of Japan.
And that was not made for an American audience. And so I understand when American audiences go like, oh, well, that's silly, blah blah blah. I love that film because of the idea of Godzilla evolving and starting from something. And so to circle back to like Godzilla -1, we get that in a way. But what we get is the evolution isn't quite as like amoebic to monster, but more of this, whereas I felt like Shin Godzilla was kind of like a god and had a very like tonology. They were kind of like, they kept hearkening back to like mythic monsters and things like that. Whereas this Godzilla and Godzilla -1 is a monster. I mean, absolutely, he's a monster.
Yeah.
And he has these terrifying expressions, and we're not supposed to be like, oh, Godzilla. You know, Godzilla is
Yeah.
not our friend in this.
Yeah.
He is a monster. I mean, his first appearance is on the island, and where our hero crashes. Doesn't really crash, but he's.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you, if you want to
Well, he's
kind of break it down.
Yeah, he's faking. He's not faking, but it's so essentially our setup is that with our hero, our anti-hero,
Yeah.
somebody who's certainly forced into it that doesn't have any other kind of choices in anything eventually, but yeah, he's been selected to be a kamikaze pilot, but his fear overrides his sense of duty. So they had these series of islands that people could use to land in certain places if they were having mechanical problems, anything like that, or they could refuel. And he lands on one of these islands, and it becomes apparent very quickly that this person is, and I'm not saying it, but in the eyes of the people, he's a coward, because he's supposed to be dying for the Japanese Empire at the closing
Absolutely.
days of World War II. So he's certainly not setting himself up to be a hero for the audience, but clearly not for the characters in the film. It's going to take a lot before anybody ever starts to even consider him an option for anything, because he's considered a coward.
He's a flawed hero, and I mean, he suffers from. I mean, this is also where we kind of touch on reflections of like modern society, is that we are still kind of working around the idea of like what PTSD does, what war does to soldiers and whatnot, and we see our hero. He's suffering from this, like from the PTSD. And in Japanese culture, they have a saying that's like, the hammer that sticks out gets, or the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. And I think that was a very like prevalent thing that was happening right at the very beginning of this film with this character. I mean, his familial responsibility, all that expectation on him, and then we have this monster attack the island, and the other soldiers on the island are like, you're the only one with the gun, and you have the machine gun and your airplane. And he is still so afraid that he can't even pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And shoot Godzilla down. I don't know if I would be able to. I mean, I'd be like, it's Godzilla.
I have no idea what I would do in those kind of situations.
But I'm not a soldier either, and
Right.
wasn't. You know, that was also, you know.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for anybody.
To go, oh, I would shoot him.
Right. Well, anyone to have that whole like diehard mentality of like, oh yeah, as soon as shit starts to go down, I'm the one that's gonna crawl in the air ducts and go barefoot, and I'm gonna pull all this stuff off. You know, I've seen enough karate movies. I can fight against an international terrorist organization. And quite frankly, I have no idea what I would do in those. Because of that same setup, he's waylaid on the island. He claims that he's had mechanical problems. They're gonna fix it. Enough time has gone by that we have our first incident with the monster. The monster arrives, and everyone's scrambling around because there was an island legend, but nobody took it seriously.
Yeah.
Now here is this giant lizard in its first form that we're seeing is running around in there. It's like roughly 40 feet tall at that point in time.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the, jump into your plane and stand by with the machine gun. And when he goes by, you're going to hit him with the machine gun, and he freezes up, and pretty much everybody dies. Not because he doesn't pull the trigger, but because they all start shooting at him with their little rifles, which catches Godzilla's attention, and then Godzilla just kind of mops the island with him.
And then, isn't Godzilla at this point, his creation, his inception is because of not just being an island legend. I mean, you get the impression that he's an evolution of atomic weapons, like, and he seems pained. Like that was one of the things that really struck me with this Godzilla, is that he seems like he's like constantly in pain. Like his skin is like activated and bubbled and like heat signatures, and there's so much attention that's drawn to like what as he starts to or as he evolves into the monster that we see at the end. I think what his vision was that with creating a monster that was going to evolve, that it wasn't just going to be like this gentle evolution, that it was very pained, and everything that seemed like, because like even when Godzilla attacks the island, he has these like strings of flesh that are between his jaws, so when he's roaring you can see like those like rivets of skin, and that looks like it hurts. I thought that was cool. Like he's always angry all the time. So like them shooting him, he's like, "What the heck, man?
Yeah.
Like I'm just here." And he doesn't seem to be like normal monsters. It would be like, is this food or fight or whatever kind of response. He's not like obviously hungry. I mean, he does eat them, which is something I'd never seen. I don't think I've ever seen Godzilla eat somebody before, really. Like chomp,
No. Well, so the Dean Devlin one, doesn't Godzilla chomp a couple of people in there?
Well, yeah, you're talking about 1998 Godzilla?
Yeah, but I think it's like chomps him. Doesn't this one we actually see Godzilla like grab and
somebody,
kinda, like throw and
and, like a dinosaur.
Yes.
And that's what I mean by saying he was like a monster versus like Shin had that kind of god-like aspect to him.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy, he's a monster.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely caught all of that stuff on the evolution of Godzilla. Once we're off the island, the atomic blast has happened.
Yeah.
We're in post-war. We're getting into 1946. And we have those montages of nuclear weapons being tested by the Americans out in the ocean.
Oh, yeah, and then seeing Godzilla underwater, like bubbling and being like, his eyes like infuriating.
Definitely.
And so that's, again, he's in pain.
Yes, I definitely got it off of for that, for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily notice it on the early Godzilla, and I don't know, I guess I didn't try to read into it too much, and now that we know there's going to be a sequel, we can kind of see what kind of a world building process is going to go on, if there's other creatures, or how the director views Godzilla in all of this. Because in the past movies, there was always Godzilla the Protector, Godzilla the Retribution.
The Guardian.
Right, exactly. So on this one, I guess I took it at such a surface level that Godzilla was a monster, but some kind of like almost like a holdover monster that happened to be on this island isolated. I don't know if there'll be other creatures, so what they'll do with it. It seemed more just instinctive animal, like it seemed very dinosaur-like to me when we first encountered Godzilla, and then it's that evolved radiation monster that becomes the pained, tortured beast that you're talking about. So I definitely got that. So that's interesting. It makes me want to go back and watch it again and see if I noticed that stuff in the early version.
Well, if you look at him, he's like, you can see like, but they do it again when they show him later, like as his final evolution or whatever. But when he's on the island, there's these quick little, because it's so much darkness happening.
Yeah, happens at night.
And it's harder to see in the black and white version, but in the color version, you can see those, like the way they animated it, or the CGI, like everything like seems to have a heat signature, so it's almost like blurring, and that's what I thought was really, like, to me, struck me as I was like, oh,
dang, we're gonna have to watch it again.
I know. Good thing I had the Japanese version.
I know. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, this feels like, so this was my favorite Godzilla. By far. This was by far, and I loved the Gamera 1990 series. I felt like that was...
Oh, Heisei Gamera is the best.
So good.
Woo.
And if you ever get a chance to watch those Gamera series, there was a trilogy of them made in the 90s. They're fantastic, and that's still got some rubber-suited action going on in there.
Totally.
Fantastic effects, but it has those people stories in it with, really conflicted people
like
stories.
Edis, the curse of the revenge, or the curse of Edis. Is that what it is?
I think so,
that one? Oh, boy, that's my favorite. Giron or Gaios.
Legion.
Yeah.
So the Legion character, so those are all great, and definitely go check those out. Those are awesome. But those were the first places where I was starting to see that there was the character element. And for whatever reason, either the director had the time, the money, or the understanding of how to pull the human element into things.
Well, Heisei era is kind of the era when like Godzilla and Gamera stopped being for children.
Yeah.
They were more like a little sexier, a little edgier. Like we have, what Godzilla versus Destroya. That's like a plot about like a
and great monster. Destroy
yeah,
is awesome.
right. Destroya is kind of a little bit like Gaios and like Legion type stuff. But I feel like that was that era where we were still kind of like we had just kind of come out of like the cutesy like Godzilla will save us, and more of a like, oh, Godzilla's a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's actually not, like, he's ambivalent. He has no feelings of either way. He's like, well, he doesn't really want other monsters around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great comment, ambivalent, because Godzilla -1, this Godzilla doesn't feel ambivalent.
No.
I really like your comment about tortured and in pain, because that's what this Godzilla seems like, that it is a creature that is in pain and it's just letting loose on the closest thing.
And it's trying to get rid of the things that it's causing its problems. I mean, it clearly...
And it's not even Japan at the time.
No.
But it's the closest thing.
Right. Because it doesn't have the sentience to know that like it was Americans who dropped the bombs.
Right. It doesn't have any idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's and I wanted to go back and comment on something that you said. I don't think it's heroic to be. I mean, it was viewed. I don't know Japanese culture, so it's really hard for me to make any kind of commentary on it. So from my seat, it's really hard for me to look at a kamikaze pilot and say that them completing their mission was heroic and not completing the mission wasn't heroic. I don't see that. So he's not a flawed hero as much as he's a flawed human, and he's totally scared, and I would be too. But he
won't commit either, though. So like
he doesn't commit. So that's excellent.
That's part of his personality. Would be like his toxic trait or whatever, is that he won't commit. Like he takes on the responsibility of a child and a partner, friend.
Right.
And they have this like they play happy family, but he is quick to constantly point out that they are not in a relationship. I'm not your dad, like to the little girl, making her cry. And his friends are like, you're gonna break her, you're gonna like mess her mind up. And but still, I mean, he ends up we kind of glossed over this, but he after the island incident goes back to where he grew up.
Yeah.
And
tries to find his parents.
Trying to find his family, and they're all completely gone. And the neighbor is left, and she's like, "What are you doing here?"
Who's lost her kids?
Yeah.
She's lost her
and
children.
She's like, "If you didn't do your job," and that's where.
As if his one sacrifice was going to make the difference.
Hammer on the nail that sticks out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's one of those. That's the Japanese culture is very like, as far as my understanding of it, as it is very insular, and everybody is like to work together towards the common.
Yeah.
You don't do selfish things because those have huge impacts on your community and family and whatnot if you do selfish things. I mean, that's where his flaw would be, like, as being a flawed character.
Definitely, yes, and I totally agree. And I know I thought this, but you actually just really said it, and it's that he doesn't ever commit to her until he's lost her.
Yeah, but does he even commit to her then?
I think. Well, I don't think he commits to her. I think he recognizes that he hadn't committed. And because I think that's the place where he's committed to the mission now, skipping way ahead to the end of the film, where now there's this mission. Godzilla's been an issue. They've tried a couple of things. Nothing's worked. So they're going to try this whole plan of trying to sink Godzilla at a really rapid rate and allowing
Yeah.
the pressure of the ocean to hopefully maybe do something. But then if that doesn't do it, the rapid expansion going back up and trying to do that and detonating a bunch of explosives around them.
I mean, it's no oxygen destroyer.
It's not an oxygen destroyer, but it was an
There is no
interesting
Dr.
attempt.
Serizawa.
It's true. So, you know, they were doing everything that they could to try to come up with this plan.
I think that's where, like, and also his drive becomes that he wants to destroy Godzilla.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think it's still on a selfish level, like where he's just kind of like, I want to destroy this thing, not for anybody.
And because now we have this new plan that we're going to lure Godzilla out, we're going to have this whole mechanism that's going to blow up and sink Godzilla, and if need be, raise Godzilla up super fast, but we need to be able to keep him out there. And they've got an airplane that they're going to use that was which is a real aircraft. I've talked about this with you a couple of times. I lost my nerd mind when this was happening. When I saw it in the film, the first time we were watching it, and they walk into that old barn, and there's this aircraft that was built in World War II. It was barely ever deployed. People now believe that if they were able to have built it on a large scale and really used this plane, it could have changed the course of the war because of its ability to outdo our fighters that were the support aircraft around the bombers, that it probably would have outperformed all of our fighters and taken out our bombers. And they had it in there, and I saw it in that barn, and I was like, that's a Nippon Shiden. And then they pulled that thing back, and here's this aircraft it's a pusher, the engine is in the back. It has a reverse canard, so it's got the small elevators are in the front and then the big wings are in the back. And it's this super high performance aircraft. And I was like, oh, they've got this thing. It's a real one in there. And that's the one that they're going to use to try to lure Godzilla out from the mainland where they can sink him.
And they retrofitted it with more bombs to be dropped because this was going to be like the plan C, so to speak, like that he was going to basically suicide bomb himself into Godzilla and destroy Godzilla from that. This was their final.
That was the secret plan C, because I don't think anyone else knew about it except for the mechanic.
Right. Well, because he was saying, well, that's right, because he was trying to get that mechanic, and they asked him how he got beat up, and yeah. Okay, now I remember what we're talking about.
Yeah, nobody else knew, and that was going to be his final move if he had to.
Yeah.
And he saw from the first big encounter that he had on that ship where when the mine went off in his mouth, in Godzilla's mouth, blew away his jaw.
We should go back to that, because that was wild. That was a fantastic scene.
That sequence was so good.
And the music, oh my God. So one of the first ideas was that they were going to, Godzilla starts chasing the boat, and they cut a mine, and the mine and Godzilla just automatically chomps down on this mine and blows off half his face. And that was that moment of they were like, aha, okay, so we can actually hurt him with large enough munition, because they realize, like, for whatever reason, in all Godzilla films, it takes people forever to understand that you just can't just shoot Godzilla.
Yeah. Well, and it's
I watched the Kong movie and they were still shooting guys. I was like, what is happening?
It's the exhaust port on the Death Star. You got to get it down the little hatch there, and everybody else is just like firing away because they're like, what else have we got? Yeah.
Why waste the munitions if we know it doesn't work? That's
right.
It drives me bonkers. Like every time we have to revisit this conversation with a Godzilla film, it's like, really?
Yeah.
You can't shoot Godzilla with a 50 cal machine gun. It's just not.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah.
Yes, it puts it puts holes in houses. However, this is a monster. But no, as realistic as that is, but that was their aha moment, and so that was when they created the other plans of like, okay, we're going to do this like sinking thing, and we're going to use the ocean's depths to crush him, because we realize that he snaps back. Because what happens as soon as that bomb blows off half his face, Godzilla starts like, first of all, you could tell it hurts. Again, we're going to the pained expressions, like, and he gets furious.
Yeah.
And he
But he retreats after
he
that
retreats,
one. He's hurt.
but he starts evolving, and his face evolves back. And he kind of, I don't know what leap of logic Godzilla has, but he's like, I have to go on the mainland.
Yeah.
And if I destroy these things here, then maybe they won't hurt me anymore. I mean, there's no like real, like, we don't have a sense of like sentience, but he is acting like an animal in that respect of like, let's get rid of the thing that's causing the problem. And so he ends up walking into Ginza, and we get this gorgeous, like, in the first Godzilla movie in 1954, there was that scene where Godzilla has a train in his mouth. And
the classic.
It's classic.
Such a classic shot.
So we have that, we get to revisit that, but we get to see it from the inside.
Yeah.
One of the more spectacular shots that, I mean, I know it's CGI, but you see in Akiko's eyes the reflection of Godzilla, like walking in the Ginza, and it is just a thing of beauty and horrifying.
Yeah.
Like you can see it in her eyes. She's looking through, like, on the train, looking through the glass, and the reflection of Godzilla back in her eyes, and the music starts swelling, and then we get to see Godzilla attacking the train, but that fantasy of knowing what was happening on the inside was really cool, like getting to have her experience, like she's holding on and she's like hoping to find a place to drop, and then when he happens to like rear the car's head over the water, she drops into the ocean. I was like, oh man alive, that's a great scene.
So good.
There's just such amazing, like, thoughtful moments that director makes in that film that's enough for fans like us who are like, I've seen all the Godzilla movies, and we're like, well, okay. And then he does that, and you're like, oh man. And I did like the fact that we're not doing an oxygen destroyer.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, at first, when they first did the bubbles, I was like, are they going to call it oxygen destroyer? Oh yeah. Because they talked about bubbles, and I was like, wait for it. Oh, it's not oxygen destroyer.
It's not, but I think it was a really cool callback to that for the people who knew.
Yeah.
There was kind of like, oh, maybe it could be, but he made his own.
But it also was more what would have been at use at the time.
Yeah.
As opposed to like
creating something.
Some MacGuffin that that is able to like deplete the oxygen from the water or whatever, because it does in a way, like it pushes him down, and they were hoping, because they realized that he could evolve, or like that he could regenerate.
Right.
That they were hoping that crushing pressure would keep him from being able to regenerate.
Right.
And I thought that was a good hypothesis. Why not? You know, that's when we start leading into he has to he kind of does his plan C and like secret plans. And when they start to execute, the boats are the principle is that they're going to take 2 warships, right? And wrap cables around him, and that will have these mechanisms attached that are going to set off the air cannons that will sink him to the bottom of the ocean. The score does something incredible.
We got to talk about the music.
I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
They take from Godzilla 1954, Akira Ifukube's masterful score, and then they also take from Mothra, and they use the score of Mothra in a way that I was not expecting at all. Like that when the 2 warships are circling, you have the dun 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 dun. I was like, oh, that's Mothra.
Yeah.
I literally got chills.
And why do you think that is? Do you think there is a symbolism between the 2 ships, almost like 2 wings in some way?
I mean, maybe. I didn't go that far. I mean, more, I thought it was pacing. Like, I think that had a perfect, like, the way that dun 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 dun. Like, I think the way that the ships were moving in that pacing had it made for an impactful sound to use the Mothra score there.
Oh, but that Fukube music.
Oh man, I know.
Oh my goodness.
So
the
good.
first time that drops, the first time that happens,
Dun, 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 dun.
it's just, even now, you just did it and I just got chills. I did. And so when it happened, the first time I watched that film, I got chills.
I did too.
Which is...
I actually got tearful in that moment because
Yeah.
I didn't expect it, and it was such a loving way to kind of hearken to it. And it also, they modernized it. The director, for the life of me, the score music, I wish I could tell you who did it, but he clearly was very thoughtful about using Ifukube's music, and gave us this discordant kind of leading up to these moments of the attacks. Like there were these very like cacophonous string moments, like string instrument sounds. It's just, I mean, there were so many things to love about this film.
Yeah. I think that it pulls enough in from the prior Godzillas for the people who are the fans who know the stuff to go, oh,
yeah,
there it is. Like, this person gets it. This is just right. And it's just enough, but you could never watch a Godzilla film and it's the perfect music.
No, but this was perfect.
That's what I mean. This was perfect. That if you had never watched another Godzilla movie before, if this was your first Godzilla movie and you didn't know that it was a callback to Ifukube's music or anything with Mothra, it was the perfect music. The score was just flawless all the way through.
Gosh,
it was
there was just so many things. So, I mean, honestly, I gave this, on Letterboxd, I gave this a 5 stars. Hands down, 5 stars.
Yeah.
This was my favorite film of this was last year? Yeah, this was my #1 film for last year.
This was
for sure.
always the Godzilla film that I wanted to see. And I had my love of Godzillas. Like we mentioned, Destroya. Godzilla versus Smog Monster was always a great one that we liked with Hidera. And then Biollante is a really good one.
That's a good one. I mean, there's so many things to love, and I love the Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, the Heisei era one, where we get the door rats, and I loved all that.
Yeah, and what the heck was the one? Giant Monster All Out Attack.
Oh yeah,
that one was
GMK.
really good.
Yeah.
Yep, GMK was always a really good one. That was always a top film for us. It was no Space Godzilla.
Don't get me wrong, I have a special place in my heart for Space Godzilla.
I have a special place in my heart for Space Godzilla too.
He's really, I love that era, but that's.
It's not the strongest film.
No.
But I have a special place for that one. That one is so before the Kaijucast.
Yeah.
When Kyle and I were, I think it might be the first Godzilla or one of the first Godzilla movies that Kyle and I ever watched together. He had a poster for it, and I said, I want to watch that one. And he's like, are you sure? And I said, absolutely. And then it was like, holy cow, what am I watching? I don't fully understand everything that's going on, because it's cheese and crazy, and it's got all the stuff with the aliens and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But I had to watch this thing because of the giant crystal shards growing out of his shoulders and all of that. Yeah, it's super crazy. It's awesome. It's very indicative of where Godzilla was at the time.
That was still the beginnings of the whole like a little edgy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the aliens were like floppy haired and
Yeah. It was great. I have a special place in my heart. Not the best Godzilla film, but it will always be a special one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean,
Yeah.
I love those films. Then that was when we kind of started experimenting more with a little bit of CGI and that was the compositing was a little better and
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, but man, so -1 is such an amazing film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what the delightful thing that this director also did was putting it in black and white. And I think to me that was the ultimate moment of I was like, yeah, this director really really loves his fans.
And we saw that one together on Blu-ray, but you saw it in the theater when
Yeah.
they did the black and white run.
And a lot of people, I went with people who had never seen the Godzilla -1, and this was their first time seeing it. And
Really?
they saw it in black and white, and they were
Wow.
like, wow.
Nice.
Wow.
It's an excellent black and white film. I like it both ways.
Agreed. The black and white is not like the James Gunn one, or was it James? Who was the one what director did that whole like?
Well, there was a black and chrome version that was done of Fury Road.
That one, not Miller, but the one who did the Justice League movies.
Oh, Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
So like the way
But is
he
that black
did.
and white or just so desaturated that
That's the
there's-
thing is I think he
yeah.
just desaturated, whereas
Yeah.
this was given a black and white treatment that was
Yeah.
very thoughtful. There wasn't any like I felt like the black saturations were done in a way that was very indicative of black and white film.
You had a dynamic range
Yes.
across
Yeah.
the black and
and
white.
there wasn't like harsh lighting, like
Right.
it didn't, because like that's what I felt like with that director,
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
well,
just
because
cannot-
it was shot. Zack Snyder shoots. From everything that I've seen, he shoots on film.
Yeah,
So everything is shot on film, and then it's digitized for post.
yeah,
But I remember watching the Justice League the first time through, and the colors were so harsh, like the lines and everything were so harsh. And then when it was transferred to that desaturated look, it didn't have beautiful gradients. It didn't have nice dynamic range to
right.
things. It
That's
was like
what Godzilla -1 has,
Yes.
though, is that there were so many gradients that
Yeah.
were beautiful, and you could see there was details that I was not able to perceive until I saw them in black and white, like things like the
a
radiating.
lot of Godzilla detail. That
Yeah,
really
the
pops.
radiating body aspects. The way he shimmered at times, I was like, oh my god, this
Yeah.
is way more prevalent in the black and white one.
Yes.
And especially in Ginza, like when the attack on Ginza, when he comes out and he's like walking across, one of the also better motions of Godzilla, like we see in other Godzilla films, like because he's always wearing a rubber suit, it's like that's like the thing, and then we see the legendary one, and he's really like out of proportion, and Shin Godzilla is incredibly out of proportion once we get to the final evolution. But Godzilla -1, he's a little chunky, but his body motion makes sense, and like that was something that the director even talked about. We saw on that that special edition showing.
Yeah.
Was that he was like, this is what my cat looks like when he walks. And I was like,
Right. Yeah.
brilliant, because that's exactly it felt like a real animal. Well, you weren't so taken out of it being like a giant monster. Like this made sense. Like
Yeah.
it felt like what you would expect to see if you saw a giant monster walking across like a town.
Yeah. And even the moves in Ginza, there's the move where there's the big whip around and the
Yeah.
tail and everything, and it feels like it has mass.
Yeah.
Watching all of that, like all of the mass having to move in that space and take all of that out just looks so good.
And then that's the first time we see the powered up attack, right? Where it literally blew my mind to see something I never even considered or conceived.
Yeah.
To have his scales like jut out as he powers up.
Yeah.
And it again, like it reminds me of that scene in X-Men when Wolverine's claws come out and Rogue asks him, "Does it hurt?" And he says, "Every single time."
Every single time.
And I'm like, this is exactly that moment for Godzilla. Like his scales like do jut out. To me, it was one of those pained moments.
Yeah.
Because he is like body contorting as that happens. It's so visceral. And again, like, I mean, I keep saying the same phrases like pain, body, monster, like, but these are what make him bring him to life for us as an audience. And I think that's again one of those masterful strokes that this director made, was that had the forethought and the love of monsters that he wanted to make this feel real for his audience, and it felt real. I mean, we were like, oh, like, and the sound effect of the powering up, like
the build up and all of that stuff,
and then the unleash. It's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, we saw like Shin did this too, like where Shin would narrow in his laser and then like he bifurcated and then like it went all over the place, and it was like an array. But this was it just seemed like he was like, I have to get this out.
It's a release of rage.
Yeah.
Is what it seems like.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
It's
not like a
something.
weapon. It is. Yeah. It feels like you're getting it out. Yeah. It's just a whole bunch of rage coming out.
Oh boy. But that was one of those moments I just remember sitting in the theater being like,
yeah,
this is incredible.
And it's masterful buildup. It's so good.
Yeah.
For the, I don't think anybody, even if it's your first Godzilla film and you're watching that, I think you know what the end result is going to be, that it's going to be Godzilla's going to like shoot a blast.
We know he does have atomic breath. We know these
like
things.
That. Yeah.
But we never see this mechanism.
Right. And that build up and that anticipation is so good because I kind of feel like I'm building up with it.
Yeah.
And when it happens and that release, that big burst comes out, and it's just so masterfully done. We have Shikishima and we have Noriko.
Noriko, which I was calling Akiko. Akiko is the kid's name. My bad. So Shikishima's now has where are we at in the hero's journey? We have the plan. The oxygen destroyer did not work. Neither did their plan B, which was to bring him up really fast because he gets really pissed off. And then he comes up with like white eyes and even more monstrous looking because his pupils are blown out from being on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
And then we go to where he comes in. Shikishima comes in, and what we don't know as an audience, but we kind of get the impression of, is that Shikishima's decided he's going to sacrifice himself, and he is like, this is the final straw. Like he is going in for that kill. And what we don't know as an audience is that there was a ejector seat installed.
Yeah.
And Shikishima decided that he wants to live. And so he's got the picture and the drawing, and he's like, I'm going for it. And we as an audience are like, oh no, he's going to kill himself. And he ends up pulling out at the ejecting at the right time.
Yeah. Well, we have two setups for that too that are subtle setups, but they are perfect films. They are perfect film setup with payoff.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment in the film where they talk about how the ejector seats and then lack of parachutes.
Yes.
They didn't have those for the kamikaze pilots because they shouldn't be ejecting and they're not going to be parachuting. So there's a comment about that earlier on, and then when we are in the Nippon Shiden in the shed and it's ready to go,
Tachibana is like looking
and
at
he's
something.
like, there's one last thing I'm going to tell you about, and we're in the cockpit, like we're in close in a nice 2-shot, but then we pull farther back and we don't hear him talking and there's no subtitle to it. He's doing this, and so we don't know what that is.
But we kind of get the impression.
We can. It has been set up for us, but there is like if we caught that other part before, we could catch this here. So we have our payoff moment, which is
as soon as he does like a voiceover narration that he's like, I want to live for Akiko, even though he gave the money to the neighbor Oda. He gave the money with leaving this note that like in case he died or whatever the case may be, that like Akiko was taken care of. And because he doesn't know that, like we are also finding out in this moment that Noriko is alive. And
no, we don't know yet.
Oh,
we don't know that Noriko is yet. Because the neighbor gets Akiko goes over there and has all of that. And then I didn't know what the note was.
I assumed that I assumed like when the courier comes up with the note and she's like and picks up Akiko and like grabs like and then she starts running like to go meet out to the ships. I have that moment. I was like, Noriko's alive.
I didn't know. So
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I don't remember the first time I watched the film what I thought, because now I'm four viewings
Yeah,
through
yeah.
it that I can't remember what my first thought was. But I don't think that I knew that she was still alive.
For me, that was a moment I was like, she's alive. And then we cut to where he's in the pilot seat, and then he's like, I want to live I don't want to die. And then they're in the, on the ship going, no, they're like, no,
What's he doing?
What's he doing?
Yeah, he's swinging around.
And he comes back in, and like a second, just really great timing. It's so almost like anticlimactic for a moment, because
Yeah.
like the Godzilla just like chomps down on the front of that plane.
Boom.
And
But it happens. Yeah.
and we don't see we see him ejecting, but then the bomb goes off, and Godzilla's head just flipping explodes like
Yeah.
open, like, and then there's light shooting up, and it's
Because he's building to have his atomic blast.
right.
So it's like, boom, he kind of stops it, interrupts the process.
Yes.
Blows up. So now we've got horrendous damage. And so all of that, it's like, it's a feedback.
And it makes a terrible sound. That's like,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
hurts my heart a little bit. But yeah, so then they're showing off the distance. He's like, oh, I can see him, and they're so happy. And that moment as Godzilla sinks down, I'm like, well, doesn't he like regenerate? But maybe it just takes a hot minute, and then we
have our hot minute.
have our hot minutes.
Yeah.
But to me, that was very indicative of like the 1954 one too.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit of, again, one of those like moments of like, the director loved Godzilla enough to be like, all right,
Yeah.
set this up.
And it's earned.
It's earned.
All of that stuff is earned really
There's
well.
we're not surprised that he would be
Yeah.
able to re-evolve or
Exactly.
regenerate. Yeah. That I liked. The only thing that was, to me, was a little like, what? Was when we all go back to the hospital to go see Noriko, and there is this scene where she turns her head, and you see this like black veins develop on the back of
Yeah.
her neck. And I'm like, what is that about?
Do you know what that's about? Because I still don't know.
There's still no. For me, if I was the writer of the next film, and we were making Godzilla versus Hedorah, I would make this part of. This is what I would say. If we're going to make a canonically connected film, I would make this part of what makes Hedorah like his toxicity,
Okay.
because, or that Hedorah's existing as a result of like the black rain that fell when
Yeah.
Godzilla shot his ray up in the air in Ginza. Like, to me, that's what I would do. Is
Okay.
like all that evolving together and like creating this monster from it.
Yeah. I wasn't quite sure what
That's
that
what I would
was
do if I was a
gonna
writer.
mean. I think the first time I saw it, I was wanting to try to draw some kind of a Mothra connection. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
I think there was a part of me that wanted to be like, oh, this is like the person that has the telepathic communication connection.
Oh, like the
with Mothra
fairies,
kind of
or
thing.
like
Yeah,
the girl with
something like that. And
Biolante.
this whole thing had maybe triggered something inside of her that was starting to grow.
Oh yeah, that too. Maybe she could be like the psychic link to Godzilla. I would love to not have a psychic link to Godzilla, because I feel like that's pretty overwrought in these kaiju films, is that we always have somebody who's like psychic linked. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, even the legendary ones, they have like the little girl.
The little girl with King Kong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is never explained or never even hinted at. They're just like, nope, this is a thing.
The
Keep
Ewok
going.
people are very special.
We got stuff to get on with. Let's
Yeah.
get past this, folks. Don't
Yeah.
ask questions.
Hollow
We're-
Earth needs to happen.
We're 4 scenes past you already. Keep going. Nobody's stopping here to ask.
Oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh
Yeah.
boy. I actually read the novelization of King of the Monsters. That's a different film. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. They're like eco-terrorists in the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, no, I think that when at the end of this film, the first time I saw it, I was getting up and I look over, and there's this Japanese woman who's probably about my mom's age, just weeping. And I walk up to her and I was like, "Daijoubu desu ka?" Like, which means, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Daijoubu," and I'm like, "Daijoubu," like, and I start crying with her because I had already been like weeping throughout this entire movie. There was all these moments that kind of drew me, but it was like how that was seeing her, like her reflection of that was like very, I don't know, not validating, but also just, I feel like she was moved as a Japanese audience member as well as like we being American audiences.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that there's not been I don't think there has been. There may be a fan edit or whatever that's got, you know, the dub over, but I appreciate that there's not been like that American audiences have really accepted this as a Japanese language spoken film with subtitles.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes people really miss out on things like this because they don't want to read a subtitle or whatever. Subtitles can go fast, sure. I mean, like, and I have an advantage. I speak enough of the language that I get the gist.
Yeah.
But nuances I lose pretty easily.
Yeah, and there's so much about culture. I know virtually nothing about Japanese culture. And it's significant. It's completely different than, you know, the life experience is completely different. They are a completely different set of folks and values and everything that happened. But then also everything that's post World War II and what happened in Japan after all of that. But then also anything that happened with Americans who had a Japanese lineage that had to make it through the war camps that we had here and the way that they lived. There is so much that I could never get that a Japanese writer, director, storyteller, filmmaker is going to be able to capture.
Well, and I think that's what is so impactful ultimately about this film. I mean, as we kind of go to the end here, it's thoughtful filmmaking is always going to take an audience where the story will be the best. I feel like. I think that if you're thoughtful in your story and you care about your characters and you care about your where you're going with it, and I feel like this is, I don't know, I lack knowledge and lack the vocabulary to say whether or not this I mean, I can only assume that this director loves.
Yeah.
Like, is trying to make an impact, but also to put a spotlight on the thoughts of the people at the time, you know, without making it a victim story.
Yeah.
You know? Because oftentimes I feel like we see like the humans as victims or scenery, they're set dressing, or they're barely there to forward a plot.
Yeah.
But this, you could easily take Godzilla out and make this just a movie about like atomic weapons and things like that, and it would easily be just as impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really great place to leave this.
Yeah.
So this is why I wanted to make the show or have a podcast and do this kind of thing, because I love movies. I love talking about movies, and I love talking about movies with my friends and especially you. Thanks. So this is huge for whoever does or doesn't ever watch or see this. Right. This is what I've wanted to do this for a very long time, to just be, and we could go off on a bunch of tangents on all sorts of other things with this movie and any of the others. So I really have loved this. So
yeah, thanks. We're glad we're getting this off the ground.
Yeah, we're gonna do more of this. And I do know what the next movie is.
I was gonna say, you should tell me what our next movie is.
So the next movie that I want to do is Dinner in America, which I have seen. I watched it in the theater. I believe the film actually came out in 22 or 23.
I've not seen it.
But it never got traction in the theaters. Nobody saw it. I remember seeing some promo stuff for it on like Instagram and a couple people talking about it. But it never got traction. It was never in the theaters. And then the end of 24, people were like, holy shit, this movie. and it did a theater run. It's still doing a theater run. It's literally doing an international theater run right now.
Oh,
People
wow.
discovered it, and it's selling out all over the place.
Well, I'll be watching it for the next one.
It was at Cinemagic here and sold out for the showing that I saw it.
Oh,
And,
wow.
so if, before, like if we can see it in a theater before our next episode, that's great. But if not, Dinner in America is so good. And I'm so excited because I'm going to watch it at least one more time, probably 2 more times for our next episode. And if we can watch it together, that's great.
Let's do it.
Man, I just can't even explain how good Dinner in America is. And it is such a it's the sweetest punch in the face you'll ever have.
Wow.
It's just such a heartfelt kick in the nuts. I don't know how else to say it.
Kick in the groin, the Jane.
It's so good because it's a very raw, stark movie, but it has so much love.
Okay.
And it has such endearing moments in it that are so good. And the denouement of the film is so beautiful. Just all the threads coming together the way they do. It's masterful filmmaking. It's masterful acting. It's so wonderful. I don't know what their budget
can't
was.
wait to
We'll
watch
talk
it.
about all of that, so
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. So thus concludes the first episode of Check the Gate. So thanks everybody for coming and watching this. I super appreciate it if you check this out. I don't care if you like or subscribe. I hope you listen to more of this stuff.
like button.
That's right. Gretchen and I just love talking about movies, and hopefully we'll have some other people that will be able to come in and talk about films with us. This has been a real joy, and I'm looking forward to doing it.
I'm glad we got
again.
this off the ground.
Oh, me too. This is so good. And Gretchen, thanks so much.
Thanks, Martin.